Okay, wanted to show you the great... Uh-oh. How did that get in here? Oh, that's not good. You weren't supposed to see that. Okay, forget about that. Where was I? Well, I just mentioned something about a new series, by the way. Be very careful when you do this. You want to go across here, but you don't want to get too deep, you know what I mean? You want to go horizontal more than vertical in there. Cut these, cut that, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. This packaging is like Fort Knox. I like it. I like it. Oh boy. Oh, which side? Nope, it's upside down. Doesn't matter. The thrill factor is still here. This was what I was talking about last week in terms of 10 years I had this publication. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. What is this called? Inertia Magazine. Oh Nelly. Yeah, this thing I got. This is going to be in my books I love series, YouTube Shorts. Yep, that's where we are. That's not even close to being flat. Don't even know. What am I doing? I'm just flying blind here. So this is the same. It's not the same. It's good enough. Whatever. Who are we trying to kid here? I wear this camouflage shirt to irritate the exact same people that are irritated by the other camouflage shirt. You probably didn't know about this one, and you can see it's pretty tight. I've had this since middle school, my friends, which tells you I have been the same size my entire adult life. No matter how much creatine I take or how many weights I push, it doesn't matter. Soy flaco. How's my histogram? I don't even know. I can't even see myself in this because of the camouflage shirt. If you haven't seen Barfly, the Mickey Rourke movie, Catherine, what's her name? Mickey Rourke, 1986, did a movie called Barfly. And he portrays Henry Chinaski, who is supposed to be Charles Bukowski in real life. And if you're asking who Charles Bukowski is, I'm hook kicking you in the head through the screen right now. If you don't know Charles Bukowski and you're into literature and writing, my God, so many hipsters over the years have stolen from this guy. It's unbelievable. So you might want to go back and research and do a little reading about Mr. Bukowski. He was a one-off. So he's portrayed Henry Chinaski. Mickey Rourke plays Chinaski. It's filmed at a time before the city completely and utterly was gentrified. Mickey Rourke puts on one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen in any film. It is definitely worth your time. And there's no green screen, there's no Marvel characters, there's no sound effects. It is just acting, a story, and a script. And it's awesome. It's definitely worth your time. Why does this look too hot to me? Does it look too overexposed? I don't care. Maybe hot and flary is my new style. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention before I get to this critical juncture, I want to say congratulations to Demi Vollering, who's this Dutch cyclist, female cyclist, who just won the Women's Tour de France for the second time. The Women's Tour de France, for those of you who don't know, is in some ways more exciting than the men's race. The men's field these days is dominated by one particular rider, Tadej Pogačar, who's arguably already the greatest cyclist of all time. And so the race is almost predetermined. Outside of injury or crash, everybody knows nobody can stay with Tadej. So when the race starts, he could blow it open the first day of the race if he wanted to, and then just coast into Paris the rest of the time. So it's a little bit anticlimactic at this point. Not to knock the men's race, I still like the race. I don't really watch much of it. I see the highlights sometimes after the fact. But the women's race often doesn't get the same coverage, and it's actually quite interesting and also quite exciting. And she's won it for the second time. That's not why I'm bringing her up. Obviously, for her to get to the level that she's at, she's dedicated her whole life to being a cyclist. I get that. There was an interview with her, and the interviewer comes to her apartment in Switzerland and asks her if she will make him a coffee. And she says, sure. And that's part of the shtick of this interview series, where the reporter goes in and always gets a coffee from the person he's about to spend time with. And it's a good series. I can't remember the name of it. The host is British. He's got that British sense of humor. And they go ride, right? He rides with professional cyclists, and he's not necessarily a professional cyclist. She makes him the coffee, and when he takes a sip of it, he starts describing it. And she starts describing it as well. And then she utters this sentence that I think all of us should keep in mind. She says, that took me 3 years of using this machine to get to that point in making coffee. So we buy cameras. We buy, sell, trade cameras. I'm as guilty of it as you are. Okay, maybe not as guilty as some of you are. I try to use my cameras. That's really the only important thing. But we buy and sell equipment and cameras, and we go out in the field and we expect to perform with these cameras. You know, whether it's a lens or a camera or something, and we just expect instant results. We expect instant relevancy. It's one huge shift I've seen in photography going back to the time when, let's say that I was in photography school, which was the early 90s. There was no talk of riches. There was no talk of fame. There was no talk of notoriety. As one of my fellow students said to me when I reached out to him years later and asked if we ever talked about that in school, he started laughing and said, none of us thought, not only do we not talk about fame or being rich, we never thought we would ever make a living in photography. And this is after spending 4 years in photojournalism school. I think of all the people I went to school with, there were a grand total of 3 who got jobs in photography after graduation. The rest of everybody just disappeared and was never part of the industry. So I think we sort of we've gained this idea that we're going to be really good, really fast, and then we're going to get a bunch of stuff from our work. And that is just simply not true in the professional side. If you're an influencer, yeah, there no rules apply. You can kind of do anything. I wrote a comment on my Discord server this morning. I can't give you names, but I have recently heard stories of influencers working with brands where let me see if I can, let me resurrect this comment, because I can probably read it better than I can say it, because I don't read too good now. None either. What was that line from Keith David in Platoon? She don't read too good neither. Something like that. I love Keith David, by the way. That dude's amazing. He's a national treasure. Shifter Media. Recently, I've heard some absolutely comical stories about influencers and brands. I can't give names, but I've heard about unprofessional behavior, violations of company policy, unpreparedness, inability to communicate verbally with fellow humans, arrogance, ignorance, and lack of work ethic. Every time I hear this, I lose respect for these brands that clearly don't have anyone who can think independently. And I totally believe that. I think there's so much sheep mentality in the creative industries, it's absolutely unbearable. And we have liberty. We have permission to be weird. We do. If you're a member of the creative member of society, you have permission to be weird. Everyone will bend over backwards to make excuses for you. And I'm not talking about being a douche for the sake of being a douche. I'm talking about creative freedom, liberty, and risk-taking. That's what we need more of. What was I going to get? I had a prop. It was not my yoga mat, not my crappy pair of binoculars, not a candlestick. Boy, did we have an interesting morning here at the house. How many different people have been in my house this morning? Plumbers and all kinds of other people. And oh, by the way, just so you know, if I'm profusely sweating during this film, it's because I can't open any of the windows. Because outside is the Frijoles fire, which is north of Truchas. If you don't know where Truchas is, it's north of Santa Fe. And it started when my wife and I were coming down Saturday afternoon. We were coming back from Los Alamos, looking east towards the Sangre de Cristos, and we saw this small line of fire. Small, and boom, with the conditions and the lack of rain and the wind, it went from that to 3,000 acres to 4,000 acres. It's 0% contained. Frijoles, en español, esta palabra significa Dan es excelente. ¿Sí? Claro? Yes, and in Latin, frijoles means Dan is excellent, for those of you who didn't know. The frijoles fire, and so it is so smoky outside, and there's just an orange glow over everything, and not a cool, like, tanner orange glow that someone we all know uses way too much of, but we're talking that bad, eerie, this sucks glow where I can't open the window so it's 1,000 degrees in the house. Thank you very much. What was the prop I was gonna get? It was something. Oh, it was a camera that was new to me. I traded for it. You guys probably all know what that is. It's a brand I've used since 1990. I have no connection to the brand at all. Maybe, never will. Still used it since 1990, no going back on history. It's a camera that's new to me, and I've never really had a chance to use it. So I went out on Saturday, tried to use it, but I'm using it in an environment that's not really my environment. What I need is a story to work on with that, which I probably will not have a chance to do until January at the earliest. So I'm just trying to get some reps in with this camera to get a better understanding. It's actually a really simple camera, and the way that I have it set up is even more simple. It's basically a giant full-frame point and shoot, if you will, but it's got some definite limitations that I'm trying to work around. Every camera I have has limitations you work around. You think these cameras, modern cameras, have limitations? I was fully digital in 1997. You talk about limitations. That's the entire thing was limitations. It was just novel. That's what it was. The entire first sales job of digital technology was, it's new. It's new. Okay, great. It injected pure China white. No, that's the wrong drug. It injected pure crank speed, whatever the bikers were using, injected that into the arm of culture, society, and professional photography, and it revamped photography in a way that we had not seen since the Brownie camera. Digital technology came along. It saved the professional photography industry, which by the late 80s was very stagnant. It wasn't to say that there wasn't great work being done. There were tons of great work being done, but the industry itself was a bit stagnant. And digital came in, injected it. Those cameras sucked dog. Insert whatever you want. Whatever body part you want to insert in there, you go right ahead. Okay, so this film was what I wanted to make a film about last time, but I never got to it. So this is an email that I got from Alex. I believe Alex is a Euro-type individual, European, which means he's more sophisticated, better educated, probably has a better sense of humor, but probably does not have as much open space. So, haha, joke's on you. All right. I am once again writing to ask you some questions concerning an ongoing project. I love this. I love getting emails like this, especially about projects. The project itself is a doc of, I'm not going to give you too much detail of the project because photographers are, speaking to douchebags, there'll be somebody out there that hears this and goes, oh, I'm going to go do that same story. So it's a project, it's a rural event. It's been taking place since 1907. That seems like a long time ago. It really does. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. He sent some photographs, by the way, which I'm also not going to show. And they looked like large format film portraits mixed with some doc work of the event itself. And we're going to get to why that large format film portraits thing in a minute, because that's the third question he has. He has a question about a book, a question about funding, and a question about, quote, the Avedon thing. And for those of you who are going, who's Avedon? I'm hook kicking you in the neck right now. The book. The event has a big regional group of interest. I plan to make the book accessible to many of these people, therefore don't want to get too expensive per unit. Smart. Seeing that my strengths don't lie in marketing, though I'm hesitant to think in the direction of self-publishing, also POD would not fit that well since the event itself would likely be the place where people walk home with a book. How would you approach a publisher with the idea? Any pitfalls? And seeing you mention those, the photographer paying $30,000 up front to get published, book deals, what's the ideal normal scenario for a publisher to work with an artist photographer? There is no normal, so that's 4 questions in one. So you jackal, I thought there were 3 total and now there's 17 questions total, but these are all good and they're questions I get all the time. And I'm trying to be fair about how I do this and how I say this because I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. I like traditional photo book publishing, I really do. But economically, they are in a very tough spot. They've been in a tough spot forever. 2008, you saw a lot of mergers after the financial collapse. Publishing is not in a super strong space right now, and consequently it's very difficult to get a book, and 90% of all the book deals I see are photographer paying for book. Okay, let me state that one more time, because I still run into people, including some people that should know this that are pretty close to me. Photographers, there's all kinds of names for this. Artist supported book, things like that. Well, basically it means, hey, you want to do a book with us? You're going to pay. Some people refer to it as pay for play. Publishers, that's nails on a chalkboard. They will bend over backwards to try to get people to think that they are a pay for play publisher, when in fact that's exactly what they are. They're trying to seem high and mighty. They're trying to make it seem like this is such an up and up business, and that, oh my God, your book's amazing. Don't worry, we'll find funding. Back in the day that was possible. Today it's very hard. Having said that, I have friends who do books without having to put money up front. I know tons of other photographers who have done this, that I even know some people who've gotten a little bit of an advance to do the book. But they have very special circumstances. I'd say for every one of those, there's at least 10, 15, 20 where the artist is paying for the book. Get over it. That's just the way it is. And if a publisher tells you, don't tell anybody that this is our economic model, I would be very hesitant to work with that publisher. That's just my personal experience. I wouldn't approach a publisher. Personally, I would not do that because I know what it entails. That's an 18-month to 2-year publishing cycle. I don't want to give that much time away from being in the field and living my life and being married to a publisher to do a book like that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying for me personally, I've been approached 3 times to do books with publishers. I've been offered 3 publishing deals. I turned all of them down. 2 because I didn't like the deals, and 1 because they wanted me to make a book They wanted me to make a book that would have sold a zillion copies. I just didn't want to make that book. I'm not a technical guy. As you all know, it's still annoying me that this camera angle's a little bit high, just so you know. Okay, how would you approach a publisher? If you're going to approach a publisher, you've got to study their catalog. You have to know who they've published before, why they published them. You should know who those people are. You should know why that publisher chose to work with them. Typically, they're going to work for them either because 1, the work's outstanding, 2, they already have a reputation, 3, they have a big following. I've seen plenty of books with people that are not good photographers at all. Behind the scenes, the publisher, everyone around them will say, this is a joke, this work's terrible, but this person is either super wealthy or they have unbelievable connections and we know we're going to make money. That's the same with the gallery world in some instances. I've seen plenty of shows by people who had absolutely no business getting a show, and they sell hundreds of prints on the first night of the show because of who they are and who they're connected to. So it's a business, remember that. Book deals, what's the ideal normal scenario? Study the catalogs. Understand the kind of books they produce. They're going to want to know if you can support, if you can bring money, and they're also going to know if you have an audience, like a real audience, not a fucking Instagram audience, but like, do you have a mailing list? Do you have an email newsletter? Do you have real people, real supporters that would help you with this, forwarding this book? If not, forget about it. Don't dismiss POD. And also remember, having POD at the tail end of what you're doing is amazing. For the people who aren't able to come to the event, the book's online. But you've got to make the right book. You cannot make your giant 1113 hardcover foil stamped book and expect to sell that POD. You could sell it in person if you sold it at the event and you signed and numbered and told people, look, there's only 10 of these. Each one has a print. They're signed and numbered. Then we have the trade edition, which is maybe an 8x10 softcover. And then you have the trade book version or the paperback version that goes on as POD for anybody around the world that wants to buy into this. So don't think about POD as one object. Think about POD as multiple books at multiple price points for multiple audiences. That's the smart way to self-publish. Okay, funding. Question number 2. I don't need to make profits. Thank God. Would be great to come to 0 at least, though. I hear you. Therefore, I'm thinking of reaching out to local photo-related businesses and ask for funding sponsorship of the project. Any general advice, sponsoring and funding? No, forget about photo-related businesses. Photo-related businesses get inundated. It's like if I was looking for funding for, damn, this shirt is tight. Am I fat now? Or is it just solid, pure muscle mass? I don't know. But I can barely breathe. Now I know what Women in the 1800s felt like. Cinch it up, baby. Woman, any general advice? Camera companies, photo businesses get inundated by requests from photographers with their hand out. It's like if I was looking for funding on a project, would I go to Nikon or Fuji or Canon or Leica or any company that's in the photo industry? Absolutely not. They get inundated. And as long as they're moving boxes, they don't care about your project. That's the sad, it's not sad, that's the truth. It's not sad, that's the wrong word. It's business. Again, they're moving boxes, their sales are hitting the numbers they want. It is all that matters. What we're doing with the equipment doesn't really factor in on a day-to-day basis. There are exceptions to that, thank God. I hear photographers telling me about their relationships with camera company sponsorships, and depending on the brand and the person, I've seen some extremely meaningful connections. And that keeps my fire alive. A meaningful connection where you have an absolute relationship with the brand. That's the only, to me, it's the only way to do it. If you're one of these people that just has a picture and a link on a website for a camera brand, it's meaningless. You want to be in conversation, you want to have a contact point, you want dialogue, you want to be able to test, you want to be able to be honest, you want to have the gear permanently, not to have it for, I mean, I see some of these things that people send me. They'll give a camera to a guy in a hotel room for an hour and a half, and he'll do a review and it'll get 500,000 views. And I'm like, knuckleheads, Mr. Potato Head, Mr. Potato Head. What movie? Mr. Potato Head. A back door is not a secret or trick or something like that. Whatever. I know you'll figure it out. Anyway, you want a relationship. And thankfully, there are brands and photographers and creatives working with brands that have meaningful relationships. That's when the good shit happens. That's when changes are made. That's when new features are added. That's when there's a trust and a dialogue. So funding, I would look for, because look, dude, I'm gonna tip my hand a little bit, which in turn is gonna tip your hand a little bit. Horses are involved. Horses. A horse is like a boat, a hole in the water where you throw all of your money. That's what a horse is. I grew up riding horses. Thank God I didn't have to buy any of them. I was forced to ride them as a kid. I hated it, checking fence, moving cows, all that kind of stuff. Horses don't come easy, and they're not cheap. I would look for funding in that arena, no pun intended, that arena as opposed to anything camera related. Don't waste your time. You're going to get pennies. It's not worth it. There's somebody in that community of horses that could easily lay down all the funding you need. And in some cases, it could be a company. What a lot of people don't seem to understand. A lot of companies have fundraising departments that are looking for tax breaks, reasons to donate money to get tax breaks. I don't know if one of these exists in the equine, whatever that word is that I'm trying to say, community, but it's out there, and I would look there as opposed to camera companies. 3, the Avedon thing. The 35mm reportage images are supposed to be supported by 4x5 portraits of the actual people. I couldn't help but drift towards a simple portrait setup with a white backdrop. What I'm now afraid of is I'm too much of an Avedon copycat, since there are undoubtedly visual parallels to In the American West book, which I love. What's your stance on this? Is it just the simplest of techniques after all to photograph people in front of a white cloth and therefore possible, or if I am too close to what's being done before? Okay, don't take this the wrong way, Mr. Alex. I do not mean this to insult you in any way, shape, or form. You are not Avedon. Avedon was so much more than white portraits on white seamless. He was. The best thing that could happen to you is if you had a little bit of Avedon rub off on you. I think the portraits that you showed me are quite nice. And they're large format on white seamless. They're simple, they're clean, they're easy reads. I love photographs like that for design. I love to keep that mix of your 35 reportage and your 4x5 portraiture, I think, and they're both in black and white. I think that that's pretty cool. Mixing formats adds to your degree of difficulty, but keeping them both black and white adds a cohesiveness to it that if you were switching to color, I would say absolutely not, but I like the two of those things together. I think design-wise, I see so many different things you could do. You could do a small insert of the portraiture into a larger book that's 35 reportage. Millions of things you can do. Avedon was Avedon. Avedon's portraiture, the moment of impact when he would hit that cable release, there was a lifetime, a legacy of work, education, strategy, practice, failure for decades before that stuff went down. Avedon would break people. He would break them and get them to that point when he made that frame. So if you have the ability to do that, do it. But I don't think anybody's going to say, look, you're stealing from in the American West, especially because the project is in Europe too. I wouldn't worry about that. I had a conversation with a photographer a few months ago who I think is a really interesting guy, and he has a big following of people who like him. He's super charismatic. He's a really good-looking guy. He's fun to be around. And I was looking at his portfolio, and he had some black and white, and he had some color. And he was primarily showing me black and white. And he was showing these series, and then I think somehow I saw he had a little stack of color. And I looked at the color, and I thought to myself, the color work is better than the black and white work. I like this color work a lot. Like, why is he showing me all this black and white stuff when I'm looking at this color? And I'm like, man, this color stuff's pretty good. And he's like, well, when I shoot color, I don't want to shoot color anymore because everyone compares me to Alex Webb. And I was like, that's one of the most ridiculous statements ever. So if someone's comparing you to Alex Webb, it's a compliment. But in the community in which this photographer exists, their knowledge of outside photographers is extremely limited, in my experience of being around them. Extremely limited. They all know the same 3, 4, 5, 6 photographers, and that's it. If they looked at my bookshelf here, they'd be like, don't know, don't know, don't know, don't know. So their knowledge of history and the industry is almost completely absent. So it doesn't matter if somebody says, oh, this work looks kind of like so-and-so. That's where your dialogue and your text comes into play. You can say, like in college when I got my first ever portfolio review, and I was one of the reviewers said, oh, your work reminds me of Antonin Kretokvil. And Kretokvil shot a lot of TMZ. I was shooting a lot of TMZ. And I remembered seeing a News Photographer magazine article about him escaping from wherever he was, young, coming to the US. And I remember reading that article about him. And so when the reviewer said, wow, your work looks like Kretokvil, I was kind of initially mortified because I thought, oh my God, did I just go out and try to copy? But the truth is, even if I was trying to copy Kretokvil, I'm not Kretokvil. He'd had a 40-year career, had been every place around the world doing every story you can possibly imagine. The guy was light years ahead of where I was ever going to be as a photographer. So to be nervous about comparing yourself to them, no, you should have context. So if someone does recognize the fact that you both shot 4x5 large format on white seamless, you can say, absolutely, I love Avedon. I love that book. It was incredibly influential. This is what I did to add to the conversation. I shot 35 reportage and I blended it together. I don't really know if Avedon shot 35 reportage. That's kind of not what I think about when I think about Avedon. So you're adding to the conversation. You're not denying that, I don't know who Avedon is. I've seen young photographers do that a ton, where I blatantly see them copying, like frame by frame, copying something that's been done in the past, thinking I wouldn't know what it is. And then when I call them on it, they basically, it's like a dog on a wet floor. They're like, whoa, backing up, trying to squirrel out of it. You just own it. You go, yeah, the guy's an influence. You know, that person influenced me. I tried to learn as much as possible for them. I added it into what I was doing, and now I'm moving on. That's it, my friends. What else? I realize the effort to answer those emails. If you're in some way available for one-on-one reviews, I really don't have time for that right now, or you knew someone with more insight into the German publishing world. I'm not super up on the German publishing world. Historically, there have always been a lot of really good German photo book publishers, but I don't have any connections in that world. I don't even have any connections in New Mexico. Who am I kidding? And man, am I sweating. Whew, it's toasty in here, and I don't have my Hawaiian shorts on today. Sorry about that. But I will be back with more.